want to break free.
Hello, this is literally Majora. You can call me Majora if you want, but my real name is Benny. So today's a Monday, and that would usually be a Majora Talks, and I guess you could kind of call this a Majora Talks as well. But it's something new that I wanted to try. I've actually had this in mind for a while, but I don't know. I couldn't find the right place to start until really recently. I'm calling this Album Thoughts. Basically what I'm going to do is present you with some facts that I find interesting about an album, my favorite songs, some opinions, a little bit of analysis, and then a rating. I actually got this idea because I started writing out a Google Doc that I had no use for, that was just like every Queen album and my thoughts on every Queen album. Yeah. And then inspiration struck, this is the perfect thing to turn into a video, so here we are. So we're going to start with the first album, Queen 1, I guess, which was released in 1973. So, for some facts, Doing Alright was a Smile song, which pretty much everyone knows at this point, but I like thinking about it. And it features Brian's weird, modded acoustic guitar that sounds like a sitar. It's got this, like, warbling effect, if that makes any sense. Another fact, My Fairy King is the first song that we hear that talks about Rye, and I'm going to assume if you're watching this, you probably already know what Rye is. Also, My Fairy King features lines right out of The Pied Piper of Hamelin. Those lines were horses were born with eagle's wings, and honeybees had lost their stings, which is actually reversed from how it is in the poem, but anyway, those words are used by one of the children that survived to explain what the world that the Piper led the children to looked like. He also makes mention to fallow deer and sparrows, which are also used in My Fairy King, but not exactly word for word the same. That kind of leads me to believe that bits and pieces of Rye are based off of the Pied Piper. That's complete conjecture, but it's still cool to think about. My favorite songs from this album are My Fairy King, obviously, Great King Rat, and Mad the Swine, which is a bonus track. Unfortunately, we've only ever heard the demo for Mad the Swine, and lord do I wish that there was a full recording. So, opinion and analysis time. I love religious imagery in secular things, which probably comes from the fact that I grew up religious. So, Great King Rat, Mad the Swine, and Jesus are all great to me. This is the first Queen album I ever listened to as a whole, which is because I always try to start with a band's first album. So, it's always going to have a special place in my heart and all that mushy nonsense. And I do like to kind of call it my favorite, but I don't think it's my favorite right now, and my favorite really does change a lot, so yeah. I'm not exactly going to be gushing about this the whole time, if that's what you're thinking. The whole album is whimsical. The sound mixing is not that great. Listen to the demos. There's really not that much difference in audio quality from the final version to the demos, other than the fact that there are multi-tracked vocals. But because of the sound quality and those multi-tracked vocals, it has a sound that's difficult to replicate. I've tried. My hot take for the day, the best song on the whole album might just be the one that Roger wrote, Modern Times Rock and Roll. My friend Peg, that read my Google Doc, called that a controversial statement, and yeah, I guess there are a lot of people that would disagree with me. But she also said that Modern Times Rock and Roll goes hard, so do you really disagree with me that much? The thing about Modern Times Rock and Roll, though, is that it doesn't quite fit with the rest of the album, but that's the case with a lot of songs that Roger writes. Or at least a lot of earlier songs that Roger wrote, which is why I didn't pick it for my favorites. Really, though, the standout for me on this album is My Fairy King. There are so many layers. And also, The Pied Piper is one of my favorite poems / fairy tales. Mostly because there's evidence that suggests it's either like a real event or based off of a real event, which freaks me the fuck out. The oldest historical record of Hamelin is something that says it has been 100 years since our children left. That was in 1384, which would put 100 years prior to be 1284, when the Pied Piper took the children away. That's fucking spooky, man. For most of my life, I've been chasing this fantasy world that's just outside of my reach, something I could never quite get all the way down on paper. But when I listen to this album, particularly My Fairy King, It was like it grabbed a hold of me and said, listen to me. Listen to me while you write. Disclaimer, I'm not saying that I'm like basing my writing off of the album or the song. I am just taking inspiration from it and using it as something to get my brain moving. That may be one of the most pretentious things I've ever said in my life, but it's true. This album and Queen 2 have had a very heavy influence on my writing. The main characters from the stories told on this album are pretty much all men. The Fairy King, Great King Rat, Jesus, Mad the Swine, and even Freddy himself when he's filling the role of the servant to the Fairy King in My Fairy King. That's neither a bad or good thing, it's just a thing that I'm pointing out. The main female character is Mother Mercury, and that's it. The less fantasy-oriented songs off the album have Brian's main theme throughout them, coming of age and growing older. As for the 2011 re-release, the demos included in it are some of my favorite earlier alternate versions of songs, particularly the Great King Rat demo, which is also how we got Mad the Swine. So now we're gonna rate it. Overall, this isn't the most cohesive album, but I don't really think it needs to be. My Fairy King feels kind of out of place, yet right where it belongs at the same time, whereas Modern Times Rock and Roll feels just out of place. Overall, we're giving this a 7 out of 10. The points that it loses are mostly for the sound quality. Well, that and the fact that Queen 2 is so much more put together. That's it for this one. I have no idea when I'm uploading this. Theoretically, it'll be a week from the day I recorded it, but who knows? As of recording this, I have an entire other video scripted and another video recorded, uploaded, and ready to go. It's just still on private because I'm like, I don't know when to post this. So, there are other videos coming soon. I don't know when. Sorry. Thanks for listening, and if you disagree with any of this, feel free to be polite about it in the comments, because if you scream at me, I'll block you. Bye!